Okay, I want to make a reply to someone, he calls himself Truth, and he said some crazy things. First of all, he said that the Puritans or Pilgrims came to America, and they meant the Native Americans. Native Americans died of disease and wars and things like that, and therefore it's Christians. Okay, so here's the deal. That's kind of rewriting history. Yes, there was diseases that Native Americans didn't or weren't used to. That was huge problems. That's one factor. The other problem with that argument is that Native Americans in general, the majority of Native Americans, well, let me just start with this. There weren't that many Native Americans. The Native Americans the estimates of how many Native Americans were in North America were much lower than they kind of reworked the numbers and they inflated them and tried to. They did this obviously for political reasons. Overwhelmingly, what happened to the Native Americans is something called hypergamy, where women started marrying into the Christians. So that's why the majority of Americans, at least if they have their ancestors came before 1900, came to America before 1900, majority of them have intermixed blood with Native Americans. It's just a historical fact. Where there are some exceptions to the rule, of course there is. But I mean, if you can live in a log cabin or a teepee, which would you prefer? So that's number one. And number two, like, disease has nothing to do with Christianity. Native Americans were killing themselves at massive amount of rates. These are civilizations that overall did not invent the wheel. So they had massive starvation and they did practice cannibalism. So Christianity helped them, in Western civilization is the greatest civilization, and it's based on Christianity. That being said, he's also trying to rewrite history. Like, there was these huge wars between Catholics and Protestants. Not really. Not really. You can really point to the modern IRA, what happened in Ireland, but that was more of a political based war anyways. If you want to do some research, you can certainly do with that. In general, are you saying that it's kind of silly to say this, like, not all Christians practice Christianity? That's number one. However, those who do practice Christianity, obviously, if they follow biblical principles, their family and country works out for the better. This being said, let's take a step back a minute. When I made the point of all communist and socialist regimes first implement atheism for the destruction of the family and things like that, there's a reason why they do that. Because in a Western society and a capitalist society, your rights are given to you by God. Socialism and communism cannot work without atheism, because the inherent idea of atheism, by socialism and communism, is that it's for the betterment of the people. They ultimately worship the state, so they have the right to take your property, take the means of production, because your rights are not given by God, they are given to you by the state. Ultimately, it goes to the worship of the state. That's why Cuba, China, North Korea, former Soviet Union, Pol Pot in Vietnam, all of these things happen specifically. They cannot have, these are hand-in-hand relationships. You cannot separate the two. Now, this being said, let's talk about atheism for a minute. Made the point that atheism is a belief in nothing. That's not true either. First of all, let's start at the very beginning. And the Big Bang. The Big Bang says that there was nothing, and then there was something, and that something exploded. First of all, that's unscientific. Something cannot come from nothing. It's just impossible. That's number one. Number two, explosion, the Big Bang. Okay? Now, that breaks. Something coming from nothing is one thing. A Big Bang from nothing, or for nothing triggering it specifically, breaks all the rules of thermodynamics. That's just that. So here we have two faith-based events. That's just obvious. Now, everything just perfectly lined up for there. Possibly, the odds of these things just happening is impossible. But let's just say these things just happenly perfectly. It's like winning the lottery a million times every day for the rest of your life. The odds of these things just happening are so astronomical. They're infinitesimal. They're impossible odds. Forget that for a second. Let's talk about how life began. Now, there's a couple of different theories. The first theory is that somehow some amino acids came together in the right configuration to form a cell, and that cell evolved, etc., etc. We don't know how. And it can't be reproduced, which is not scientific. Science is the idea that you could reproduce experiments. In the 1950s, I can't remember off the top of my head, there was an experiment. They tried to recreate the pre-human civilization, goo, basically, and the exact perfect circumstances in a laboratory under controlled circumstances, and they could not recreate life. They could not create cells. That's the whole point. So we have, so far, that's just one theory. So that would be three faith-based events. Faith-based, because you can't reproduce it, and something can't come from nothing. Unscientific. So those are three faith-based. Now here's another theory. Now this is called directed transmerbia. What the theory is that some sort of celestial or alien or something came to the earth with the correct cells or amino acids. Maybe it was an alien snot, who knows, came to the earth, landed perfectly in the right circumstances, and somehow formed life. How do we know this? We can't. We don't. There's no way to prove it. This is, again, faith-based. Now, here's the other theory of atheists, is that amino acids carried on the backs of crystals, and because crystals are naturally mutating, the crystals mutated them in the right circumstances or right order. So therefore, bam, life. Now, can we reproduce this? No. Okay. Another faith-based, well, I won't get into this, but these are currently what we think, what atheists believe. They don't believe in the existence of God. They refuse to accept the design of anything. So, yeah. So there we have it. We don't have any evidence. We can't prove it. Nothing. So, what do we have? We have a lot of faith-based science, but really we just have a rejection of a designer. I mean, clearly there are many laws of nature that we know specifically. They're perfectly directed. Now, is there these are questions that should be answered. Otherwise, it's just faith. So if these are faith-based, yeah, that's where we're at. So I hope you learned something. You covered a lot. I mean, there was a lot of things that they didn't. There was something else that they would talked about using really. So how about this? So my point in saying this is, atheism is not really a faith in nothing. It's it's faith. You have to believe all this. And the morality, if there is no touchstone of morality, then who's to say that civilization, Judeo-Christian ethics, really has formed Western civilization? Are there some things that you can, I don't know. I mean, are there some things that you can critique? Possibly. Does it produce the best society that we've ever had? Of course, there's no doubt. And a lot of things that you're taking are totally taking out of context, and you should really do your own research on it. Can you name a better civilization other than Western society? That's where liberalism came from. And atheism, like I said, specifically is a faith-based. It only leads to communism and socialism. That's because the good of the collective. When there's no God, that's always what happens. It's always been tried. And because of that, that's why when it's the good of collective, it's okay to kill your mother because it's good because she needs an XYZ procedure, and they have medical boards that will tell you, hey, you can't have this procedure because good of collective. So yeah, this is really the point. The point is that atheism and communism always leads to this. And you really have to really want to rewrite history. Communism and socialism has been the most destructive force in history. It's killed millions of people. And that's coming from that can only specifically come from atheism. You can't separate the two. You cannot. You can say that Christians are not acting Christians, but the Judeo-Christian ethic sometimes. But Judeo-Christian ethics always create the best civilizations. Atheist civilizations always lead to socialism and communism, which ultimately leads to killing fields. And that's just how it is. You cannot separate the two. So I hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next one. Please continue to pray and read the Bible daily.